Welcome to Jet Coding. So in today's tutorial, we bring to you some of the higher order functions from JavaScript and some of the ES6 way of doing things to make your life very easy. So we are still on the data structures and algorithm, but we thought it's wise for you to at least feel how some array dots, let's say map. Then what you want to do is that we have this, so let's have a function. So this is an arrow function, right? So then we pass in, let's say, n, right? Then we do something like n2 undefined. So array, so we map through, okay. So let's return this, right? So what we did is that we used the map, right, to transform an array, right? So when you want to transform an array, so you see that when we want to map each and every item in the array, then raise it to the power of 2. So we have 1 to the power 2 is 1, 2 to the power 2 is 4. So when you want to transform an array, right, and get a new array, because the map retains a new array. So when you want to return a new array, you can use the map method to achieve that, right? You can use the map method to achieve that. And one thing that, so you can see that, right, map transforms, right? Transforms an array, and returns a new array, right? It returns a new array. So you can use the map method. Likewise, we have another one to call, right, for each. So we can use the array dot for each. Then we also pass in a callback function, and let's say we pass in n. Let's give it an arrow function. Then we also maybe return, right, the n, let's say modulus 2. So let's say modulus 2. So I think I have a typical example here. So what we'll do is that we have this word, have a typical as this word, and we want to use the for each, right? For each. Let's copy this. I have this word. So we want to use the for each. We can achieve that by doing this. Yes. We'll see that we want to also transform the array. So we pass in for each, right? So we are using this array of words, and we store something. So okay, so I think the best thing that could have happened, let me try something like this. So let's give it, let's say, let's say final, and store and give it final. Wow, still not working.
Take the return from the block, return keyword.
Really?
Yeah. Because
okay. So let me see. Console log, and let's give it. Yeah. So I think this works, right? So let's see.
But can you highlight on the map again? I think if someone is watching and today is his first time, the mapping,
Okay.
you will not get the N, the meaning of the N, if you can highlight on the N again.
Okay. So what we use the map for is to transform an array. All right. So let me come this. So in order for you to transform an array, we use the map method. The map method gives you the flexibility for you to transform an array into a new array, right? So what we do is that this N is the element in the array. So it's just like using the for loop, right? So the for loop, we know that the I will represent each element in the array. So this in the transformation, Sn will be each item in the array. So we pass the item to the map function and we multiply it by 2. Just like doing, let's say, so we have just like doing, so let's say 4, then we have, let's see, word, right? Word of verse. Then we want to so we just want to console.log the word, right? So word, and we get this same thing back. So we see that this word represents every item in the array. So this N stands for every item in the array. So meaning that we pass the item, each item into this map function, then it transforms it and returns a new array out of it. So I hope it is clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that means the N could be anything. So let's
yes, N could be.
Okay,
so
let's assume
let's assume that.
Can you make the array, let's say products for me, so that will be very easy for them.
Okay.
The array at the top.
So let's say
the list of
okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's say elements rather.
Yeah.
You can just use elements times 2 and we'll get the same thing.
Yes.
So let's do this. Products, right?
That's a product.
So
yes.
in this products, yeah. So in this case, we can just use products here. Products, yeah. And use products.
Yeah. So single each one.
Yeah. So each product in the products will be passed into the for loop, then we get it back. So just as the product is an element or is an item in the products array,
exactly,
when we pass it into the map function, it transforms it. So when we pass 1 into this function, it will just square it and return the value, right? So that is what the map does, right? So I think I hope this is clear. So let's look at another one. So we said the for each. So I think this will be a best example. So we change it to products and we have products, right? And we have products. Yes. So what I want to do is that, you see, I'm using the for each to also, let's say, in a way, transform the array, because so it's just giving me the results here. You see that I'm using the template literals, right? So I'm console.logging every product. You see that we have every product here, but I want to also transform the product by adding ed to it. So it can be anything, ing or ed, it can be anything. So you're just transforming, right? the the product elements, right? So each product in the products array. So we can also use the, but not mind you that the for each doesn't retain a new array. So the for each will iterate through just like using the for loop, right? But the map transforms the array and retains new array. But we know that from our experience using the for loop in our algorithms tutorials, we got to understand that using the for loop just iterates through the list or the objects that you are using, right? And it doesn't retain a new array. So we can use the for each to also loop. You can use it basically for everything. You can use it to loop through and change something. So by changing something in your array, right? So for each, that is for each for you. Now we also have what we call filter, right? So okay, so I think I'll leave this, but the more, so sorry. We also have another one called the filter, right? Filter. So we can say the array, right? The array. So I have a perfect example here. As well, so this one. Yeah. Copy. So what I'll do is that let me paste this code here, and I'll comment everything, and this as well, right? And this. So you see, let me comment this as well, and change this to products. Products, and change this to the products, right? And change this to products. Now, see what I'm trying to do. Now, the filter also transforms the array and gives back a new array. So I'm saying that I'm filtering the products array, right, by passing each and every product into the filter callback function. And I'm returning the product that has a length greater than 6. So when we check our products card, we are trying to filter, just as the name suggests, filter. So you want to filter the array, right? So we are saying that any array, any element in the array that has a length greater than 6 should be present in our new array. But any other element that has a less length, the length is not more than 6, should be eliminated. So we see that when we transform the array, we get back a new array with the elements that has the length to be greater than 6. So we can check what we call, we had spray. So let's check the spray.length, right? Let's check the length method on the spray. We see that we have 5, and this is not greater than 6, right? So this won't be presented. And we had limits elits. So you see that again, we had limits, right? Limits dot the length method. We have 5, and we had also the elite, right? And it was also 5, I guess. It was also 5. Yes. So we see that these elements doesn't have a length greater than 6, so they won't be present in our new filter. So just as you are filtering, so the name suggests filtering. So you filter the array and retains it will retain a new array of what you have specified. So assuming we specified greater than, let's say 7. would have had only 2. Let's say 8, 9, only distraction. So you see, we are filtering the array and giving a new and returning back a new array, right? Okay. So I hope it's clear. Really, I hope nobody has a question. Or
Yes,
if anybody has it.
No, it's clear. So you filter it, then you pass in. Let's say you provide in a test something like
Yeah.
What are you filtering?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever you want.
Yes, it's just like a Boolean. Yeah, Boolean.
So I think it's clear.
So, yeah. So I think we can do one more, and use the array, right? Let's use the array. So let's use the array. I think that one will be clear. Then we have array. Then we have. So let's use E as elements, right? Or better still, let me write it so that they will not be confused. So elements. Now, let's do elements. Let's say let's say elements greater than, let's say, 3, and return this. You see that all these elements are greater than 3, right? They are greater than 3. So let's bump it up and be like elements greater than 10. We only have 20. Greater than, let's say, 1. And let's say greater than, let's say 7. They will all come. So we are trying to filter the array and only give back the elements in the array which are greater than 7. So I think this makes sense, right?
Sure, it makes sense.
Yes, really. It makes sense. Yeah. Now we have what we call reduce. Now, reduce is one of the nicest concepts in the higher order functions, and it helps you to it will help you in a lot of ways, right? So what reduce does is that, as the name suggests, when we are trying to compute, right, an element, or trying to compute the sum of an element in an array, we can simply use the reduce, right, to just calculate the sum. So we had an array, right? You can just, so let's do a console.log, right? And let's do something like array.reduce, right? Reduce, then it takes in two parameters, right? The callback function takes 2 parameters, right? So we can pass in the accumulator and the current value. The current value can be the elements, right? The elements. And what we can do is that we can just return the accumulator plus, well, plus the elements, right? Plus the elements. And, sorry, plus the elements. And what is happening?
I think after the element, you're supposed to put the initial value of 0, right?
Okay, so we can just do 0.
I think the 0 is supposed to come. Okay. Did you bring the comma before? There should be a.
It doesn't.
It's supposed to come at the back of comma before. Did you bring the comma?
Okay.
Okay, there's a comma over there. Okay, that's all. I've seen.
Yeah. All right. So let's see.
Hello?
Yeah.
It should be accumulator plus element, or
the accumulator element, not array. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm.
Hello.
Yeah. Sorry.
Can you
Yeah.
take the zero out? Let's see what will happen if you don't have the zero.
Yeah, nothing will happen. So it
Initial.
will just pick the first element as the initial.
Okay.
Yes, you will just have the same thing. It will just pick but when you specify, let's say 10, or let's say when you specify 10 it will increase to 90 because
Exactly.
the initial will be 10
First
and it will
initial.
add the elements to it. But when you don't specify, it will just pick the first element of the array as the initial value and it will add it to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one other way that we can also use the array, the reduce. Let's change our product. So now let's add in more elements, right? So
Can
let's
you
add,
go back to the reduce? Let's make something clear over there. Let them understand the
okay.
accumulator and then element. So the element is individual element on the array, right? And the accumulator is the sum of the array, everything, right?
Okay. So a breakdown of the reduce method is that the accumulator, when you specify the accumulator is just like when you are doing something like so we always do let's say sum, right, equals 0. Then what we do is that we do some for loop, right? And let's say I is equal to 0, right? Then we have I less than 10. Then we have I plus plus. Then what we do is that we just do sum, right? Class equal I, and we get 45, right? So this is the initial value. So the initial value is 0, right? And when the first element of the array becomes 1, so when it becomes, let's say, 1, then we add 1 plus 0, which, so we do 1 plus 0, 0 plus 1, which will yield to, right, 1. So now this is the current sum. Then in the second iteration, we have the I to be 2. So plus 2. Then we have 3, right? Then this becomes the current sum. Now, in a similar fashion, this here, so let's do it like this. So this here, this value is the accumulator. So our sum equals to 0 is the accumulator. So at every point when we do the summation, that current value is the accumulator, right? So, and the element is just individual values in the array. So each time that the computation adds something to it, the accumulator becomes the current, the sum of what has happened.
Yeah.
So in the first round, when I is equal to, when the element in the array is equal to 1, the accumulator is equal to 1. Then when the element is 2, the accumulator becomes 3, and the third element, so in that fashion, so we have 0 plus 1 is equal to 1. So here is the accumulator. So this is the accumulator at this point. And at this point too, here is the accumulator. I hope it's clear.
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah.
So one way that we can also mess around with the reduce is to transform it into an array, right? Into an object. So let's have a couple of duplicates in this array. So we have present, and we have, so let's say we have spray, right? Spray, and we have limits, and let's say we have another limits. Now, one way to transform this array is to just use a simple trick using the reduce. So we said when you're reducing something, mean you are transforming it, right? So reduce part of the transformation functions. So what we can do is that's in the products. So we can just do, right, products. So let's call the products array dot reduce, right? And we pass in to our, now what's return? Now we don't have to return anything, but just that we have to pass in the accumulator, right? And that element. Yeah. So that element. And what we want to do is that I think we have to check if, right, we want to transform this array into an object. So what we have to do is that we have to check, right, if the accumulator, yes, accumulator of the products, right? No, of the element, rather, of the elements, elements. So this will give us, let's say, a true value. So this will check if it is true, right? So if it is true, we want to accumulate. So we pass in the element of the accumulator, then we increase it by 1. So plus equal 1, right? Otherwise, if it is not like that, what we want to do is that we want to also set it to 1. So if it is not inside, so assuming this is true, right? So if we already have an element in the array, we add 1 to it. But if not, it is just 1. So when we add our else here and see that the accumulator in this position, right? The accumulator in this position, right? Then we set it equal to 1. That's what we want to do. Then what we do is that we have to return the accumulator, because the accumulator will be that object.
The product.
Yes.
Product. Okay, we are using. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think what is happening? Is it the products? Yeah. So reduce the accumulator and then we add +1. Otherwise, we set it.
So each element,
yeah.
Each element.
Yeah. So yeah, it's true. Okay. So I have forgotten the objects. So now when we pass the object, there should be an object so the object is just like the initial, right? Yeah. So when we pass, you see that it will count all instances of the spray. So we had, so let me bring our objects here so that it will make sense. Now this is clear. So in this products element, we pass it to the reduce, and now the accumulator is just like the current value. So when the accumulator, when you pass, see, we previously explained that the accumulator is the current, like it will be what's after what has happened, that value is the accumulator. So when we are setting the initial value to an empty object, and we are saying that since the accumulator is, let's say, the value itself, we check the current value that we are. Is it in the element? If it is not in the element, that current value, that value is the accumulator, and that element, right? So that element becomes the key, and the value that it will count will be the accumulator, right? I hope I'm clear.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I don't know if I should come again. So what I'm trying to say is that this, since you know what the accumulator does, right? So now, once you are passing this as a key to this object, right? So the current accumulator is an object, right? So when you are accessing an object, we check, is this object, right? So that accumulator is the object, right? So this empty object, do we find the element inside the object? If no, we set the element and increase it by 1, right? So in the first round, we check spray. Is spray in this accumulator object? That's the initial value. This object, the initial value. So is it in the object? Okay, it is not in. So we set spray as the key, and we increment it by 1, right? Then we move on to limits. Now limit, is limit in the accumulator? No. If it's not in the accumulator, we set the key to the limit and we add 1 to it. Now this will be the end of our tutorial. All right, thank you.